What's going on, everybody? It is your boy Zamboni. I am an herbalist and astrologer, and it is time to talk about the astrology of the week ahead. Thank you, as always, for being here. Thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for going to Spotify, Tidal, Pandora, checking out Can't Help Myself. Thank you for going to ZamboniFolk.com, where you can find all of the things. You can find the music there. You can find the electional report there. You can find the Astro Basics course there. You can book a reading there. All of the things. There's probably a bunch of shit that I haven't even remembered to plug. Thank you for being here. Let's talk about the astrology of the week ahead. This week is loud and raucous. There's a lot of stuff going on. It is a rowdy time. So, of course, we have moved into Sagittarius season. Happy birthday, Sagittarius. All my Sagittarius people out there. I know that this is going to be a big season for a lot of folks. Here is one of the things that's going on. First is we've got this major Mars retrograde in Gemini, which is opposite to Sagittarius, right? So we got stuff in Sagittarius and stuff including the Sun, Venus, and Mercury. Mercury and Venus are moving toward the end of this sign this week. And as a result of that, those folks are going to oppose Mars in Gemini. Now, when Mars is retrograde, then that always happens at the time when Mars is opposite to the Sun. So in the first place, that's a great time to go outside and look at Mars in the sky, because when it's dark outside, when the Sun is down, then that means that Mars is up. Mars is super bright, super red, like all of that red stuff. You hear about Mars being red and like angry and irritated and stuff like that, like ruddy complexion and all this sort of stuff. You can see it. You can see it in the sky. Super cool. But also an opposition to Mars. And the Sun's not going to make an opposition to Mars. That opposition is going to happen next week, directly at the time of the full moon. We'll talk about that later. But this week, we're going to get an opposition from Jupiter. Not at all. That's not what's happening here. Jupiter is in Pisces, square to Mars in Gemini. And so that Jupiter is like, Jupiter in Pisces is fun and, imaginative and delusional and all this sort of stuff, like real big, like imaginative, creative energy. But that Jupiter is not in his best mood because he's got this big T-square going on. There's folks in Sagittarius square to Jupiter. There's also, and that's not like such a big deal because Jupiter rules Sagittarius as well as Pisces, so Jupiter is in fairly good position there. But a square to Mars, and this Mars is just getting grumpier by the day with planets coming in to oppose. We can think about an opposition, planets being Venus and Mercury, especially this week. Venus and Mercury in Sagittarius opposite to Mars and Gemini, an opposition, there feels like tension of some sort. There feels like conflict, like especially with Mars, right? So Mars is retrograde. Mars is not able to move forward and do all the things, push forward, expanding, doing new things and all this sort of stuff. There's a lot of review taking place. Whenever we see a planet retrograde, all of our re-words start to show up, right? We see like review and reevaluate, rethink, all that sort of stuff. I've been talking about Mars in Gemini, Gemini being a Mercury sign having to do with writing or graphs of some sort, of any of that sort of stuff, right? Thinking about Mars as having to reevaluate the action plan, right? We've been talking about this for a long time at this point, right? Mars has already been retrograde for about a month. We've got another month to go after this. Even further than that, we've got 5 weeks to go or something like that. January 11th, I think, is when Mars turns direct again. And so I've been consistently advising clients up to this point to not even worry about trying to push forward at this point. This is the time for review. This is the time for, we did a couple of weeks ago, I talked about how it was my birthday and I wanted some donations to help me do music stuff, right? Thank you for everyone who helped with that. You're still welcome to donate. There's still a bunch of money that I need for the situation, but we were able to get a recording session. So now what we're gonna do is post-production, right? And so there's this idea of going back, seeing what we recorded, right? And if anytime you see that graphy, like photography, right? Or anything graphy at the end, then it's about writing it down, right? So we're in Mercury territory here. Anytime we're looking at like dissecting the minute details and any of that sort of stuff, that's real Mercury, Gemini, Virgo sort of vibes, right? So we're going to go back in and do all of the little editing that needs to take place and make sure that everything lines up properly and like all the super like little neurotic stuff, right? This is a great time to do all of that stuff because we can't really move forward. We can't trot on and like break new ground here at this time. Mars is just not in position to do that. Mars is in position this week to get some help. Now, this is really interesting because we've got Mars in Gemini, we've got Saturn in Aquarius. Those two are air signs. Air signs see each other in a friendly and helpful and supportive kind of way. This is a trine aspect that we can think of. Tri, that means three, right? There are three air signs. We can think about how a tripod is super stable and secure, right? So Mars is getting this trine from Saturn. Now, we've been talking about Saturn in Aquarius as kind of the bad guy for some time here, right? We've been talking about Saturn Uranus and how there's like all this disruption to the status quo and to the machine and to the whatever. We've been talking about Saturn as being like this super powerful technocratic manager in Aquarius, right? We've been talking about that for a long time, and it's been kind of a bummer for a period of time, right? But this Saturn in Aquarius is making this trine to Mars in Gemini, also making a sextile to the planets in Sagittarius, right? Those are soft aspects. Those are helpful, supportive, complementary in some way. So Saturn in Aquarius is actually in real good position to help us out this week. And actually we have, right now we are moving into the very end of the good Saturn election. So if you want to use Saturn, like you want to put Saturn on the rising to begin your project or something like that, in order to get in on some of Saturn's good properties. Saturn is really good at endurance, for example, or Saturn is really good at making sure that things are organized, making sure that things like will last the test of time. That's what Saturn does, right? Big on consequences. I've been talking a long time about credit where credit is due as much as crime and punishment, right? Both of those are ways of engaging with consequences. And so Saturn, if you put in the work beforehand, then and usually it's a lot of foundational work. Foundation is a really good Saturn word. Then you put in that strong foundational work, and then you sort of get the credit later as you see how strong the thing is that you built, right? So still a good time to do that. And we are running out of good Saturn elections because as the sun gets closer and closer to Saturn, then Saturn's going to go under the beams. And then when Saturn comes out from under the beams, then it's going to be Saturn in Pisces. And that's a whole different game. So we've got really good Saturn this week. This is a really good week to look into all, it's a good week to do your Saturn prayers or any of this kind of thing, lean into Saturn hour and stuff like that. Like a lot of times people want to do sun stuff, especially for like jobs and this kind of thing. And the sun is great for a lot of things. I really like the sun. Me and the sun have a great relationship, but this week, the sun is grumpy. The sun is in Sagittarius, like making this opposition to Mars. Both Mars and the sun are just more and more, like the word consternation comes to mind here, just like grumpy as shit at each other. So and Mars and the sun, they kind of like want to move. They want to go with it, right? Saturn, on the other hand, if we're looking at reviewing, if we're looking at taking another look at the plan to make sure that our long term is going to work. Remember, if we're thinking about January 11th, Mars moves forward. And then we're not talking about like, it's done on January 11th. We're talking about like, now we can actually get started. And Mars doesn't move out of Gemini until March of next year, right? So if we're looking at that kind of long term sort of stuff, then Saturn is a great idea. It's a great idea to sit with Saturn and do, if you're going to do prayers or if you're going to just do the Saturn things, do your management stuff, do the shit that you don't feel like doing, that is important to the infrastructure of your relationship or your business or whatever it is, right? Do all that sort of stuff. We've got Mercury and Venus this week that look like they want to be like a little extra rowdy. We can see maybe some verbal confrontations, some arguments, this kind of thing happening. We can see it getting really loud. If that sort of thing is going on, don't forget that you're right on time. That's what time it is right now. And so if there's something explosive going on, if you feel like exploding on someone or something like this, then that is where we are in this moment. don't forget to do the Saturn thing. Slow down, slow and steady wins the race. Thank you all, as always, for being here. If you want to check out the music, if you want to go to zambonifunk.com and find any of this, there's a bunch of free stuff there. Thank you for being